Oh boy. Today on the show, we continue our dinosaur movie theme with a film that came in the wake of the success of Jurassic Park in the early 90s, Tammy and the T-Rex. Welcome back to Geek Channel 8, GC8, the movie podcast for geeks. This is Eric.
And this is Will.
We do a podcast, so I listen to other podcasts. One podcast that is very popular with our listeners is The Last Podcast on the Left. One of the co-hosts of that show and his girlfriend, now wife, I think, Carolina Hidalgo, do a podcast called No Dogs in Space, which is about bands. And because it's on Spotify, they can play actual clips of the band.
Right.
Because they're covered under Spotify's license. Carolina Hidalgo does another podcast called Movies with the Mads with TV's Frank, which is one of the characters from Mystery Science Theater 3000. I thought I'd mention that I've been getting very into that. Maybe we can convince her to come on our show someday. I don't know. I think we're so beneath the production values of quality of her podcast, but
Maybe she'll, hang out with the little people.
but I figured that was a great entryway into today's, which I'd say uh probably qualifies as a bad movie. I believe that you once said that you thought that I was probably deprived of corn and cheese in my diet as a child, and as a result, we do this. I don't understand why people complain about my love of bad movies, and like we have one friend who was always like complaining back in the day of like, I don't understand this whole bad is good thing. And then we have another friend who criticizes films all the time and he's like, why do we always have to watch a bad movie? But yet this guy, like, who said this, like, when I was hosting movie nights, is a huge MST3K fan. So it's like, oh, how is it any different? That was one of the reasons I was always hesitant to watch MST3K. It was in the very beginning, I was like, they're just making fun of bad movies. That's what we can do. We should be doing. It's like, why do I have to watch other people making fun of the movie? That's half the fun, And it's like, but I since came around and now I'm a huge Misty. I love MST3K and its various incarnations. But I just never understood the people that always used to complain when I showed bad films, but suddenly now they get it or whatever. Or like, it's okay if MST3K does it, but if Eric just hosts a bad movie night and we're drinking beer and watching a movie, they don't get it. Although some of the best times I've ever had have been doing that. So
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know.
Oh, yeah. Even the ones where I'm like, we can't even finish this one. No, we can't. No, we're not doing it. Or like, let's try watching this again because we fell asleep the first time. Okay.
So you tell me what is everybody's deal?
I think it's the myth of expertise, maybe. I don't know. We're like, well, we can't do that. You have to have blah blah blah. I know for me, like I'm like, I always thought, oh yeah, you gotta really have your crap together if you're gonna start a business. You know what? That is not true. That is so not true. As a matter of fact, I think that kind of thinking stops more people from starting businesses who could probably actually be really successful. Meanwhile, other people are out there starting businesses, failing, starting, but yeah, it's a sort of thing where it's like, oh yeah, no, we can't do that. That's for the people on stage, you know. Notably, you have never, since I've known you, accepted the idea that the people who are in entertainment somehow have something that you don't, means that you can't do it. So, which
Oh,
goes to figure.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I've worked with people who I'm like, while we were on set, they were still trying to come up with a reason for, and this is like big names, right? I'm not going to mention any names, but we're like still trying to figure out plot holes and things like that while we're already shooting the thing. And I would say something, or I would say, you know, this just doesn't make sense. Like, why would X do Y? And then suggest what probably would be a better thing. And we would do that. But do I get any story credit for that? No. It's just like
You just have to sell for satisfaction, brother.
I think there's a lot of people that work in the entertainment business that just are in the entertainment business because they happen to have a connection somehow,
Yeah.
and they have absolutely no creative skills whatsoever. They just know the right people. And sometimes even that can be good. The movie we're going to talk about today, like, was written because they had access to a dinosaur. It's like that's the whole and they only had access to a dinosaur for 3 weeks. So like they're like, okay, we've got this dinosaur and we've got 3 weeks. Quick, write a script.
I mean, literally, Becca was asking, like, why was this movie made? She literally asked that, like, why was this movie made? I'm like, I'm not sure.
I want to
Well,
know why Becca was watching this film. Like I have said before, this, like, you should have known by the title that this is not a movie that is pre-approved.
Becca, do you have any words to say on why you're watching?
Because I had a huge crush on 90s Denise Richards.
She says because she had a huge crush on 90s Denise Richards. So, yeah, that's fair.
Nobody knew who Denise Richards was when this came out.
Aha! She totally did, because Denise Richards was big in Teen Vogue and all sorts of stuff like that. So she was there for a certain segment of people. But you're right. She had not gotten into the film industry yet. Really.
We talked a little bit about Denise Richards when we talked about Starship Troopers, and we'll revisit that conversation here later. But I want to talk a little bit about what was going on in the year leading up to the making of this film in 1994. So real quick, background to 1994.
Bro, this has been crazy.
Oh, do you have if you have notes on that, I will totally let you do
I mean, I don't have much, but man, there okay, the ones that just setting the time period, this was like 1994. We got Kurt Cobain. That's when he left us, right?
Yep.
9 Inch Nails released their album The Downward Spiral.
Yep.
And Selena released her last Spanish album, right? So, but I thought the other one I thought was like, oh, I like, it really sets the time period. Nancy Kerrigan was attacked at a Detroit ice rink.
Oh
rink,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, I think that really sets the tone for the crazy that what this was. It was this movie. Oh my gosh, that really set that tone. I mean, because this movie was like it was own little universe. It felt like a late 80s movie.
I think when you're working in the B movies, when you're making really low budget films, you're always like 5 to 10 years behind the times in terms of technology and the look of things and stuff like that, because that's what you have to work with. So I'm not surprised that mid 90s B movies look nothing else, like not quality wise or whatever, but look like studio films from the 80s, right? Because they don't have the same kind of, they can't afford the good lighting and all of that. They have what was state of the art 15 years ago,
Yeah. I love it. So yeah, I didn't have a lot there. I was just like, what is going on with that year? Seemed extra crazy. A lot of things were hopping off. Like for example, free trade agreement, NAFTA, that was hopping off then. That was about, and frankly, we're still living with the after effects of this stuff.
Yeah.
But the movie itself reflects the crazy. I think it really does. Because
Yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay. Well, let's talk about how this movie came about, since your wife wanted to know. Let's talk about what happened here. So the director is a guy named Stuart Raphael, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He said that there was a guy in South America who had an animatronic T-Rex that was scheduled to be sent to a park in Texas. He said, quote, the eyes worked, the arms moved, the head moved. And he had it for 2 weeks before it was going to be shipped to Texas. And he came to me and said, we can make a movie with it. I said, what's the story? And he said, I don't have a story, but we have to start filming within the month. And so I wrote the story in a week, unquote. All the locations were within about 20 some minutes of his house. You'll notice that everything looks like foggy or smoky or something like that in the outdoor scenes in this. That's because they were shooting in the middle of a wildfire that was going on.
Wow.
Yeah, so there were big wildfires in California that year. I mean, there are every year, but that was one of the big years. He said, quote, I was just trying to do a film for people that like wacky movies. In other words, you laugh at the experience that I was facing, which is, what the hell are you meant to do with this material? I was sticking all this shit in just to make it work. Of course, when you only have a week to work on a script, it's a bit thin. I'm also the biggest plagiarist. I'm constantly asking the cast and crew if they have anything better that they can add. Unquote. That is exactly what I just said. Remember, like when I was working on it.
At least he's honest about it, though.
Yeah. So yeah, it was originally R-rated, and it was called Tanny, Tanny, and the Teenage T-Rex. But when it came out, they wanted a wider release, or they wanted to, like, they thought it'd have more appeal if it had a PG rating or a PG-13 rating. So they cut a bunch of stuff out and released it as Tammy and the T-Rex, which nobody took any notice of until in 2019, Vinegar Syndrome restored and theatrically released the 90-minute uncut version that nobody had seen before, with all the blood and the gore. And suddenly it became a cult classic. And there is a game called High on Life, a 2022 video game, that the entire movie exists as an Easter egg in the game.
What?
Yeah, you can watch the whole movie in that game. And that's how a lot of people saw it for the first time, the uncut version of this for the first time.
Pretty genius. Yeah, no.
The original film had a 43% Rotten Tomatoes review with a 3.8 out of 10 average. The uncut film, Tammy and the T-Rex, the gore cut, has an approval rating of 100% based on 7 reviews with an average rating of 6.6 out of 10. So there is a huge difference between these cuts. I've never seen the edited version. I don't plan on it. Like, what's the point? Like, if you're going to make a movie with T-Rex biting people's heads off, you just can't. You just can't cut away from that. You got to show it. All right. Before we get into all the gory details, what are we gonna eat?
Okay, so the gory details. Okay, so you mentioned the gory details. There's a lot of squishing, and there's a lot of stuff coming out of stuff and blah blah blah. Oh, and this is a very very cheesy movie, super cheesy. Okay, so I was thinking about this is weird because at the time we were convinced as Americans anyway that fat was bad, right? It was really bad for you. We just stopped eating fat, everything would be fine. The era when things like Snackwell's cookies were popular, they were like, yeah, no, there's no fat in these. You can just eat as much as you want. Turns out that's not really true, but whatever. Oh, and then a few years after that, the infamous Lay's potato chips with the Olestra, which were the ones that went right through you. Yeah, those came out. So I decided I didn't want to deal with any of that because, well, for one thing, hopefully you can't buy Olestra stuff anymore. I hope not anyway. And I don't know where to get Snackwells. But what I did discover was that something that was very popular back then, I remember, because it's probably the first time I heard of brie, but basically a baked brie, right? So, and this is best because
wait a minute.
Baked.
We are watching a notoriously bad lowbrow film and you choose baked brie.
Well, yes, this is my pairing. I feel like, for one thing, you know, brie used to be very hard to come by or whatever, and fancy blah blah blah. Now you can get it. You can get it at Aldi's, so don't worry about that. But anyway, yeah, and you can so essentially check out a recipe for baked brie with puff pastry, and then just use the pre-made everything. Make yourself some. Top it with nuts because that actually comes up in the movie. And enjoy. I feel like this is the perfect pairing because it is cheesy, squishy, nutty, and half baked. I think that's why it works really well with this movie.
All right. Side note or footnote to that, since you were asking about Alestra, I thought it was only appropriate to say that Alestra still exists.
Oh
Uh,
no.
it is, since it's made by chemically combining sugar and vegetable oil, it releases no toxic fumes and could potentially become a safe and environmentally friendly replacement for petrochemicals in those applications. So it's currently being used as a base for deck stains and a lubricant for small power tools. And there are plans to use it on larger machinery.
We
Okay.
used to eat that.
So there you go. Thought that would be worth
God bless
mentioning.
America, man. I mean,
Food
it's like
or
the
power
free.
tool lubricant, you decide.
Oh
Okay.
wow. No chemical left behind, man. I'm just saying.
I want you to try to, for the moment, divorce this from reality. I want you to, for a moment, try to look at Tammy as a character and not the actress that plays the character. We will get into talking about Denise Richards later. However, if you can imagine a young Denise Richards with an abusive boyfriend, I know that's hard to imagine given her later husbands, plural. But for now, just imagine her as a sweet young 23-year-old, 22-year-old, who I guess in this is actually,
A high school student.
it opens, she's at cheerleader practice, and her new boyfriend, not the abusive one, Michael, who is played by Paul Walker. We will talk more about Paul Walker later too. The late Paul Walker, who was probably the only good thing to come out of the Fast and Furious franchise, but you know, whatever. Anyway, Paul Walker plays Michael, and he shows up, you know, at the end of her cheerleader practice, and it, you know, causes problems right as they're leaving when her abusive boyfriend Billy shows up. The cops have to be called. That's how quickly this thing escalates.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It occurs to me. I thought these were for a while. I was like, these guys are high school students, right? But now I'm like, maybe they weren't. I don't know. It was very weird living in this weird space. The ex boyfriend shows up, but like before we get to that, I don't want to gloss over this. This whole movie opens with this dance routine, you know, all in the spandex and everything, midriffs and all this stuff, to a song that was written specifically for this movie about it was don't miss the song. It's awesome. And yeah, so I'm like, I don't even know what's going on here, but I'm like, yeah, this is a great way for a B movie to catch somebody's interest. It's a bunch of great looking women dancing and you know, in incredibly elaborate routine for even whether they were high school or college. And
Well, this is where I felt a little bit guilty because, like, even though, like, Denise Richards was 22 or 23 when she made this, she had yet to sort of peak, in my opinion, in terms of looks, and she
yeah.
still had a little bit of baby fat, and like you're like, is this an underage girl? I don't know how I feel about this, you know?
I felt that way too. Except what I figured was like, okay, we're not. If so, we are not going to see anything inappropriate. And I wasn't really vibing that much anyway. Honestly, I'm like some some of the other ladies. Oh my gosh, and we'll talk about the cops in the show. But anyway, it was designed to titillate, and they did a good job. And then immediately in the fight, this is why I brought up the nuts earlier. The fight outside, it just felt like a teenage sex comedy from at the start, right? Because in the fight outside, they're beating each other up. They're using like one of them's using like freaking uh, wrestling moves, and then
Oh, it's totally WWE worthy. Like the moves and everything
right,
are like, yeah.
and then one guy grabs the other one by the nuts, and he's like, ah! And then the other guy, he grabs the other guy, ah! And when the cops show up, they're like, you guys we got a testicular standoff. We got to let go. And it turns out one of the guys had a cup on. So, I mean, it is bananas this is just like the first, I don't know how many minutes. Oh, and we should not forget, because he does figure in highly, we get to meet the diversity hire because he is black, he is gay, and he wears like super Afrocentric stuff, which I'm like, I guess they thought, I don't know if they thought every black person were dressed like that, or they just like, no, that's just extra. Just throw some extra on there. I suspect it was just the actor, that's probably just his clothes because they were pretty nice. And I'm not saying they could afford them otherwise.
Absolutely every character in this movie is a stereotype. Okay.
Yes.
But
Yes.
on top of that, they're not only stereotypes, they're cliche stereotypes. So it's like another level of, and he definitely is. But I'd say the cops are, the bad guys are, like everybody is a stereotype, and a fairly cliched one at that. But I think they sort of took it to 11. This is like a trauma film
Yeah.
when it comes to that. Okay, the police are called to a high school fight, which never happened in our day. It's like you could get killed. They would kill someone before a cop was called. So I guess it's the 90s. Things are getting a little more progressive. So now the cops actually get called. I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
guess so.
So yeah, Tammy, however, sometimes called Tanny. She's credited in the credits as Tanny. So Tanny/Tammy, she tearfully runs away. Then we cut to the bad guy's lair. There's like a Tyrannosaurus in a dark warehouse. And Dr. Wackenstein and his assistant Helga are checking this out. And they have a guy named,
Billy?
is it Billy? Oh, I may have gotten the names wrong. I think I called Tammy's abusive ex Billy, but I made a mistake.
Becca says you're right. You're correct. That Billy's the abusive ex. Who was the guy who went on to be Uncle Fester? Do you remember his name? So he has a scientist. He has a boyish face scientist.
Bobby.
Minion.
Bobby.
That's what it is.
Bobby,
Okay.
who we know from Children of the Corn. He was like Isaac in Children of the Corn.
Yeah, we had to look up. This movie reminded me a lot of Earth Girls Are Easy, because we're just filled with faces we recognized, and then when you look at them, like, oh my god, that person did all this stuff. So yeah,
right.
He's from Children of the Corn. Yeah, and he has two sidekicks. One a beefcake. He has two other sidekicks. One's a beefcake bodybuilder, and the other one is a giant model type woman.
Yeah, that's Helga, his assistant.
Yes,
played by Ellen Dublin. But Dr. Wackenstein himself is Terry Kaiser. He's best known as Bernie from Weekend at Bernie's. He is best known for literally playing a dead body.
I thought he was great in this. He really brought the cheese.
He's a very over the top bad guy. He did not hold back. I feel like everybody did their thing pretty well in this. Denise Richards and Paul Walker, they're taking this role seriously, right? Being the first starring roles for each of them.
Yeah.
Like Denise had been in a couple of things before and had a modeling career, as we mentioned, but this is her first time as the lead, the female lead. And I think this is Paul Walker's first time as the male lead. Back to the story. The cops show up, break up the fight, cuts to this warehouse where Bobby is like operating this mechanical T-Rex and showing it off to Dr. Walkenstein. Very clever that it's not an actual T-Rex, it's a robot T-Rex. So
Yeah.
now they have an excuse for why it like,
Looks
looks and moves like a robot.
right.
Their plan is, and we're going to breeze through the plot really fast in this because it's not a very complicated plot. Their plot is to put a human brain into this thing, right?
Yeah.
So Tammy calls up Michael and has him come over to her house and sneak in. While he's doing that, a couple of the girls that are friends with Billy, they see him and then they call Billy up, and Billy and his gang show up, bust into the house. They grab him, they kidnap him, they take him to an animal like wildlife park where they beat the shit out of him and
Yeah.
leave him
What
there.
the heck?
So the animal stuff was really well done. So I got curious about that. And it turns out that's how the guy who directed this got his start. He was like an animal wrangler on Tarzan films and stuff like that. So he's like, so I was like, wait, they got real lions and stuff like that. How did they do that? At first I was like,
Right.
okay, they're going to cut to something else. And this is all stock wildlife footage. I thought that until the lion enters the scene and there you see the Michael and the lion in the same shot, and I'm like,
Right.
oh shit, they got real lions and stuff for this. This is not like stock footage. Anyway, long story short, he gets attacked and nearly dies in this park when he's found and taken to the hospital, nearly dead. Tammy and the diversity hire guy and his so drunk he's practically passed out guardian are all there in the hospital. The
Yeah.
hospital itself is crazy. If you look in the background, all of the extras, every extra has something weird or crazy going on, including the nurse who lets them in. Basically, when nobody's paying attention, the doctor and Helga kill him, so that they can kidnap, take the body away, perform a surgery cutting his skull open, which like they completely show it. It's like one of the most gory scenes
The
in this.
jigsaw.
Yeah. Hilarious. Totally worth seeing. Blood everywhere. Like, at one point, Bobby has to hold up a metal tray to block the spray of blood. Everybody is just mugging it in this. And then they put his brain into the T-Rex. And then the T-Rex eventually, gets loose, starts killing the bad guys, tries to make contact with Tammy, eventually does, and like
Yes.
manages to like reveal through like charades to Tammy that he is in fact Michael's brain in the body of this T-Rex.
That's
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's worth mentioning. They have this T-Rex head, right? And then they just like show like these I don't know, they're just like gloved hand T-Rex hands and they just show them doing things like it's just they just lean all the way into the cheese like so far if you remove the cheese they would just fall over. That's how far they're leaning into it. Yes,
Yeah.
all of it. Yeah.
This is definitely a movie where it's like they never said hold back or that's too much. They're like just go there. I mean, there are little things in every scene. Pay attention to the background actors. Pay attention to the actor that's not talking. Everybody is doing. There's all kinds of little gags throughout this film.
Yeah. In a way, I love it because I feel like it was one of those things. It's like, hey, yeah, let's all make a movie, and I know a lot of people. Let's people will get work. People will get their first, whatever. Cool, let's do it. And I don't know if you can still do that, but I hope people still can because that part was really enjoyable.
Yeah. I think that this was a situation of like, we've got some money, we've got a T-Rex, let's make a movie in like a matter of days. And like, it's not going to be art, but, we're going to make money off of it and we're going to get to have fun doing it. Long story short, this thing ends in a standoff at a barn where the T-Rex is completely destroyed by gunfire from the cops. Tammy is able to recover the brain, which she takes home, and she has a camera and a computer, and she can still talk to Michael
Yeah.
via cam. She does a strip tease at the end for him.
So what did Becca say at this point? She
What?
didn't. She didn't. I don't think you hated, did you, Han? But like what she said was, "Is this the reason they made this entire film to get to this?" And I'm like,
I honestly think that was more of a, we got to have this somewhere in this film. So let's let's have this in the end. What's kind of ironic about that a lot of people have pointed out since. Now, no one knew where Denise Richards' career would go after this.
yeah.
And no one knew where Paul Walker's career would go without this. Currently, Paul Walker is dead after a horrible accident in the Fast and the Furious franchise. However, he still lives on in that his voice is still being used in Fast and Furious films and stuff like that. So, in a way, he still lives on even though his body is dead. Denise Richards now is an OnlyFans cam girl who does striptease on camera and stuff like that. No one saw that coming way back in 1994.
No.
So, in a weird sort of way, this kind of had some prognostication in it. um, let's talk about a couple of the other actors in this. Helga is played by Ellen Dublin, I think. She was most famous for her role on Lex, which is not a sci-fi series I watched, but she's done a lot of sci-fi stuff. I think most recently she was the voice of the Bene Gesserit in Dune. So
Oh, wow.
she
Cool.
is a bona fide sci-fi star person.
That's something I love about science fiction is that when it comes time to make like, to get big, right? I don't know, this may be true of other films, but like it's like, okay, so this is a big film. I'm making a big science fiction film, finally getting to make it. And the people who make them seems like they always reach back and it's like, that show, which maybe wasn't very good, but I remember that guy or that lady or whatever, and I want them. And they reach back to the people who inspired them. And of course, if you're in science fiction, anything of any note, you'll have fans forever. Forever. Like it's crazy. You can go and it's like, yeah, I played like a second guard in like Buck Rogers. It's like, oh yeah, we love you, man. Come sign this.
I think that was always looked down on, or people didn't take it seriously as a real career. And nowadays, it's like, I think everybody wants to be in a sci-fi film or a superhero film or something like that because they know that forever after they can go to Comic-Con and make money signing stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's a different thing. And now I think people will also realize that, oh yeah, I played this bit part here. Who knows? Some guys later on is going to be like, I love that character. I'm going to bring him back, and it'll be all about him. Something stupid like that. But like, I think, actually, I think that you were a fan of these. The Thunderbolts is right now. It's coming out from Marvel. Anyway, it's a bunch of operatives, and these are all side characters, right?
Right.
They're not the main characters, but now it's a movie about them. So just an example. I like that. So who else you got?
Well, Sean Whalen plays Weasel in this. He's been in a lot of stuff. He was in like Twister. He was in Wes Craven's The People Under the Stairs.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, he played Roach in that.
Okay, we want you to play characters who have names of unwanted, unloved animals. He's like, yeah, I got it, man. You don't need to give me any notes. I know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, he was Carl Ferret in The Bold and the Beautiful.
See?
He was Birdman in the TV movie Waffle Hut. He played a lot of one name characters. He's just like sort of crazy looking character actor.
Yeah, I love that.
He did the voice of the hitchhiker in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game. He's just an interesting character. He was in Halloween 2, the Rob Zombie Halloween 2 as Bex.
Oh.
You'll see him popping up here and there and all sorts of things. There are a lot of people in this that just you know them only as bit players, but nothing that you would immediately recognize.
There's Theo Forsett. He did he's the diversity hire guy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He did Street Night and Street Hawk. He was in The Rookie, which is fairly recent. He was in Mantis, which, man, we should do something on Mantis. That's pretty cool. Maybe we should do a whole thing on like just superhero television shows because they have really changed. He was on A Different World, which I mean, honestly, he might have been playing a very similar character, but for want of a better phrase, straighter. Yeah, no, he's a working actor, going all the way back to Hill Street Blues, which I'm like, man, how old were you, dude? Because he must have been pretty. Is this the same guy? Because wait, was that? Because it says he was on T.J. Hooker. Maybe we're getting, I don't know, maybe he had an older guy in it, or did he play a kid? I have no idea. But anyway, he's been around a while, and I guess he might still be working. I like, um, I like this idea of that there's more to acting and movies than just the movies you heard about that are big. There's I don't know all kinds. It's sort of like hey, let's go to the circus. You mean Barnum and Bailey? No, no, I mean the other circus, which we don't know the name of, but there are other circuses and people actually still perform and they're still performers and they still can be appreciated. This movie was not great, but I will tell you, I had fun with it, and why was this movie made? Part of it. Who were they thinking? And and everybody just going all out. I like that.
I still want to know why, like, I can recommend a bad film nowadays and people totally get the concept of watching a bad film and appreciating it as cheese. Whereas when I tried to do that 30 years ago, nobody understood where I was coming from when I did that.
Man, you were just ahead of your time, bro. That's all.
I guess so. All I know is that there were a lot of complaints.
Again, this is the myth of the expert. We got, it's sort of like we have to see somebody else doing it before we see it's okay or something. And even then it's like, oh, only they can do it. But, maybe, I mean, anymore, so much of what I consume is not made by experts by any means. It's just made by true amateurs, the people who are doing it pure love. Man, I don't even think they're making any money.
At the time that we're doing this, there's an anime version of the Riders of Rohan segment of the Lord of the Rings mythology.
Oh yeah,
that's like in theaters. I think Peter Jackson's producing it, but also I've heard that scheduled for like next year or something like that is the Hunt for Gollum. And I'm like, wait a minute, that was a YouTube video. Like a bunch of fans made that. That was a fan-made film.
Mm-hmm.
I guess someone must have seen it and been like, okay, let's make that for real. I hope it's the same people. I hope they get the big break out of that. But yeah, they're like making, apparently, supposedly, we'll see if it comes to pass, the Hunt for Gollum feature film out of, that same segment of like what was going on in that part of the story where it's off stage in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Like Tolkien never wrote it. They just talk about it in flashback.
You know what? I think there's something to be said for the idea that these days you can do a demo. It's like your demos are video demos. They could be video, audio, whatever. And people are like, "Yeah, wow. What if that guy had a little bit more money? What if he had a lot more money? What could we do with this?" And to a certain extent, it's exploitative as always, but at least they're picking up this work and raising it up instead of being like, "Yeah, we don't need you. We'll just copy what you're doing," which, that's always been a thing, from everything from like street fashion to music. It's like, yeah, we don't need that band, but we can copy what they're doing, that kind of stuff. Distribution changes have just really vastly changed how things work. And I don't know if anybody actually has a handle on it, but it's not the way it used to be, obviously.
Yeah, and I have no idea if they're just taking the idea and making it, or if the people who made the short are involved in it, or if it's even going to happen, or it's just a rumor.
Right.
I have no idea.
Well, okay. Has Been Hotel, okay, animated. It's like sort of edgy, crazy thing, but it went from something that was on the internet to something that's on a streamer. That kind of stuff is really cool.
Well, let's get back to wrap this up.
What were we talking about?
Tammy and the T-Rex. Final thoughts. Thumbs up, thumbs down.
I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I think it was all in. They didn't hold back. They gave everything they had, and although what they had was just lots of cheese, and sex jokes. So yeah,
I'm going to give it a very reserved thumbs up. It is thumbs up, but know what you're getting into. It's only thumbs up for people who can appreciate really cheesy bad films.
that's true.
If you cannot appreciate a film going in knowing it's going to be bad,
Yeah.
then you're going to hate it.
Oh, you're right.
You're going to absolutely hate this. It's not even in the same arena as a Hollywood film. It's its own thing. If you like trauma films, you'll dig this.
I mean, honestly, even the cars were nicer than a trauma film.
Well, there's a Rolls Royce in it. How they got that, I have no idea.
Oh, that was just somebody's car. It was just all those cars. I was like, yeah, just bring your car.
I don't think anybody who worked on this could afford a Rolls Royce.
Oh, that's fair.
Clearly, somebody knew somebody who owned a Rolls Royce and was willing to lend it to him, because that's the only way they would get it for something like this.
Oh yeah, that's true. And there was one real nice convertible. I don't know, man. It was astonishing.
Yeah.
They say everything happens for a reason, and apparently the reason for this film was we have a dinosaur available for, a very short time. So let's make a movie.
If you like the show, like, subscribe, rate, review, whatever your particular platform that you consume podcasts on has. Even better than that is just tell somebody else about the show. We are trying to get everybody to tell 2 people about the show. A year ago, it was everybody tell 1 person about the show. Now it's like everybody tell 2 people about the show. And if you want to communicate with us, you can do that on Facebook. We have a Geek Channel 8 page and a Geek Channel 8 group. The group is where we talk more. Join the group and we'll approve you. And if you want to message us by email, we're GC8, letter G, letter C, number 8, podcast@gmail.com. Until next time, this is Eric.
And this is Will.
Signing off.
Well, what? We can't watch Shakespeare again?